Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of The Fad Show. So on today's episode, I have big things happening for my Golf Alltrack, no pun intended. But a while back, I scored these Golf R Calipers off of Facebook Marketplace. So I'm gonna finally I acquired all the necessary accompanying parts that I needed to do this job. So today, I'm finally gonna install these. And hopefully it will be a nice improvement in braking and then also just in aesthetics, which is, if I am being 100% honest, probably the big reason that I wanted to go this route. Should be a pretty simple job. With that, let's get to it. All right, so these caliper hold down bolts are T45s. I don't have a thin enough wrench for these, so I'm just using a pair of vice grips on them. And these do have Loctite on them from the factory, so it'll be difficult to remove them for a while until you get past the Loctite. And once you remove this top one, the caliper is going to be free to move. It'll probably be held in place a little bit by the brake pads. I have hook I'm gonna try and use. If this isn't big enough, I'll have to get a bungee cord or something. Guess I should have left that other one in there still. All right, so that actually worked out not too bad. And I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the pads. There we go. And these are just clipped in, so you just kind of have to wiggle them out. All right, the next is gonna be these caliper bracket bolts. I don't know what size they are yet. I'll get back to you. I think they're 19 millimeter, but. All right, so I was wrong. It was the other 19 millimeter. And by that, I mean 21 millimeter. So I'm gonna break it free with my breaker bar. And then I'm gonna break it free with the breaker bar, and then I'll use my electric ratchet to remove it the rest of the way. So it looks like the rotor hold down is the T30. If you live in a rusty climate, this might be a little bit more challenging. I'm here in Texas, so no issues there. All right. I'll put a lug nut back in so when it finally breaks free, it doesn't fly off at me. The next is going to be to remove the backing plate so I can fit the larger ones for the 340 millimeter rotors. Would I be lucky enough for these to be 230? Also, yes. All right, and I'm just gonna. All right, now time to install the new dust shield. Which one is right? 311 or 312? I'm gonna go with even is left. When I used to work as a merchant mariner, even numbered lifeboats were on the port side. But in this case, it looks like $90. I could just go look up the part number on the computer. But where's the fun in that?
6.5 hours later.
That was on here like so.
Day 2. Many months later.
You know, I could just look at a diagram or watch the video of someone else doing it and save myself some time, but where's the fun in that? Since I can't get this behind the hub, I'm gonna use my little Allen wrench to tighten these. I don't want to strip them in case I ever take these off. This would work, I just couldn't get on there perfectly straight. These actually come in super handy if you don't have a set for tight to work places where you can't use a Torx bit socket. And for torque spec for these, I'm going good and tight. If you want to look up the actual Volkswagen spec, be my guest. All right, so before I put the calipers on the car, I'm going to make sure the pistons are pressed in all the way, and then also I'm going to lubricate the caliper slides. So I just need to take the calipers apart just the same way that we did with the old calipers on the car. All right, so to retract the pistons, I just have my, whatever this tool is, brake pad retractor I got off of Amazon. It was super cheap. And I don't know if you can see this, but it will push the piston in slightly. And just go until there's resistance. You'll feel it once it bottoms out. Easy as that, it's retracted. And then these dust boots are a little dry, so I'm just putting some silicone lubricant on them, just to keep them kind of moist. Keep them from drying out and cracking, and then letting dust into the piston. I don't know if that actually does anything. In my mind, it does. Okay, so next is going to be to lubricate the seals, or the caliper guides. So these just pop out. And just wipe off the old grease. And VW uses white lithium grease for caliper slides. You can buy the VW stuff, or you can do what I'm doing and just buy the auto parts store, Permatex. And a little bit goes a long way with these. You can actually hydraulically lock them, so you don't want too much. Ask me how I know. So it appears both of the caliper mounting brackets have the same part number. I haven't looked at the calipers themselves yet. So my gut instinct is it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna put a tiny little bit of brake parts lubricant where the, I guess I should clean these off first because they're still got old grease on them. Where the calipers, or sorry, the brake pads slide or sit, and this just, in theory, will keep you from getting a squeak potentially. All right, so the new rotor's on. With the Zimmerman rotors, it comes with the like zinc coating on them, so I don't put any never sees on the hub. There's already zinc there, so in my mind, I don't see the point in it. I did spray these off with brake clean just to clean up any oils on them that got on there in shipping. You're not supposed to completely remove this coating, so I tried my best to get, there was a bunch of crap on there, to get it off without taking off too much of that break-in coating. Unfortunately, as you can see, I got a little bit of it off. Also, I ordered new rotor hold down screws. I turned my garage upside down. I can't find them, so I reused the old ones. I just put a little bit of never sees on there, so next time I do brakes on this car, I'll be able to get it off. And now I guess we'll be take two on putting the caliper bracket on. And there's one more area I forgot to lubricate before, so I put a little bit more brake paste on there. All right, so I have my torque wrench set to 200 Newton meters. I'm gonna torque down these caliper brackets. All right, so now I'm gonna install my EBC red stuff pads, and as far as I can tell, it doesn't matter which ones go where. They all have the same part numbers on them. There's nothing in the instructions about ensuring they go in a certain place. So I'm just going to All right, so now the moment we've all been waiting for to get the R caliper on here. I understand that the old caliper is still here, but I'm trying to minimize the time that I'm losing brake fluid. So I'm gonna wait until this is in place. And I got new caliper mounting bolts that already have thread locker installed. These get torqued to 35 Newton meters, so I guess now is as good a time as ever to do that. All right, so for this next part, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna explain it because I don't think that I can film and work in here because there's just no room. But there's two little clips that hold these brake lines in that just go in here. So you can just pry these out with a screwdriver in order to free up the brake lines. So now this is loose. This is loose. I have my new line ready to slot in here and go up there. So this is kind of counterintuitive for normal brake jobs. I went ahead and filled my brake reservoir up to the absolute max because obviously I'm expecting to leak some out, and I really don't want to get air into the ABS module. So I'm gonna go ahead and put cardboard under here, probably get some more because obviously you're going to leak some out. I'm just going to undo this brake line, pull this off, put the new one in, and then that will free up the old caliper to be able to come out. All right, so here's this side all done, and now it's just going to be rinse and repeat on the other side, and I'll meet you guys back at the rear when I do the rear brakes. All right, so now I'm gonna work on the rear brakes. I don't think I even actually mentioned it in the intro of the video that I was gonna be doing this, but I am replacing the rear brakes, and then also I'm gonna paint the calipers to match the front. So the process for the rear, as far as removing the caliper, is exactly the same as the front. So 13 millimeter T45, or actually never mind. The rear ones don't have the Torx, they just are 13 millimeter. And this is going to be a 14 millimeter triple square for the caliper hold down bolts, or for the bracket, the caliper bracket bolts. And they're not really easy to get to. Here, I'll show you. Here's one, and then the other one's up above. And these bolts are torqued pretty good. I apologize, my neighbor has started mowing the lawn in the front. There we go. I'm just spraying silicone on the brake rotor I'm spraying silicone on the caliper piston dust cover before I retract it. You will need a special tool to retract these. I rented one from my local auto parts store that works great with the VW calipers. All right, so this tool engages on the two teeth in here, and then this puts pressure on it by tightening this, and then you'll turn it clockwise to compress the piston back in. And don't make the same mistake I did. I left this completely full from when I did the front calipers and changed the brake lines. So when I compressed the pistons back in, it overflowed and spilled all over my transmission. Luckily, there's nothing down below that's really painted because it will eat the paint off. But yeah, if you make that mistake, or learn from me and don't make this big mistake, but if you do, make sure you clean it off anything that's painted, or it will eat the paint off it. All right, so I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but I elected to go ahead and paint the calipers with the brake line and the emergency brake cable still attached. I just flushed my brake fluid not long ago, and I just really don't want to deal with bleeding the ABS module. So this is how I'm going to do it. It is by far from the correct way to do this if you want the best results. I'm just trying to get some black on here to make it match the front now. I think in the meantime, this like porous aluminum is so hard to get clean. Like I spent hours and hours, and this is the best I could do, and there's still little spots everywhere. So I think what I'm going to do is try and find a cheap set of used calipers on eBay, and I'll take them somewhere to get media blasted and then maybe even powder coated, or try painting them once they've been media blasted and just completely clean. It is just really hard to get this porous aluminum clean, but I'm going to give it a go. I don't think I'm going to have good results, so. All right, so I'm going to start by painting the caliper brackets first. These were much like the actual calipers themselves that I cleaned and cleaned and cleaned forever, and this is the best I could do. And I'm using this POR 15 black caliper paint. I like the POR 15 products. Unfortunately, I think I'm not going to do the product justice by the lack of preparation. But I'm just going to give it a try. I ended up hanging the brake caliper from a jack stand in order to facilitate best being able to paint all the way around it. So this PR15, they say do one coat and then wait 3 hours and then do a second coat to give it like the enamel type look like the fronts have. So hopefully it'll match pretty good. I mean, even if it looks like this is better than the stock, just cast aluminum color. All right, so it's been probably about 18 hours since I did the second coat. PR15 says 24 hours, but I just want to get this back together. So here is the color match. It's not absolutely perfect, but I think no one will really be able to tell the difference once they're on the vehicle. Here's how the calipers came out. So I'm pretty happy with it. I think you're only going to notice the difference if you hold them side by side, which obviously is never going to happen. So off camera, I went ahead and greased the slides on these caliper brackets, and we'll go ahead and get everything buttoned back up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put the caliper bracket back on, and I have new bolts. These bolts are torque to yield, so they have to be replaced every time you remove them. So eventually, after a lot of fighting, I got the caliper bracket back on, and I didn't order new caliper hold down bolts for the rear, so I'm just going to put a tiny bit of blue Loctite on these. And before I torque down the caliper bracket, there's just not a lot of room to work here in the rear, so I'm going to put the caliper on, and then I'll torque everything afterwards. Oh, and it'd be great to put the brake pads in. All right, here's the pads in place. I don't know if I really showed this on front, but these little ear clips or whatever just clip in here. They're in place, and now I can go ahead and put the caliper on. All right, now I'm gonna torque down the caliper hold down bolts, and I wish I could find a good way to film this, but I just don't think you're really gonna be able to see. There's not much room in here to work. All right, so the first torque on these is gonna be 90 Newton meters, and then it gets torqued to 90 degrees after that. And that's why these bolts need to be replaced, because they're torque to yield bolts. All right, so now I'm gonna mark both of these with a paint marker. My torque wrench does do angle, but just in case it messes up, I like to mark them too. All right, and then the caliper hold down bolts get torqued to 35 Newton meters again. Once again, having a ginormous torque wrench, that's definitely not happening. Maybe the top one I can do. Well, I guess these are just getting done by feel. With this little stubby ratcheting wrench, it's probably going to be pretty good and tight. I guess the moral of this story is that I need to invest in a 3/8 drive torque wrench. I have a 1/4 inch drive and a 1/2 inch drive, and sometimes there's just the medium size spots like this where the 1/4 inch drive is too small and the 1/2 inch drive is too big. All right, now done, besides bleeding the brakes. All right, so the last step is gonna be to bleed the brakes. I have my Motive Power bleeder set up, pressurized to 10 pounds. I put one 500 milliliter bottle of Matul 600 in here. Hopefully that's enough. And normally you would start from the furthest wheel from the master cylinder and then work your way ever closer. In this case, I only opened the system in the front. So I'm gonna bleed the front first, theory being not to pull air into the rear brakes. I'm not sure if that's how it works, but that's how I'm gonna make sense of it in my mind. So I'm gonna bleed the two fronts and then I'll check the two rears. My car is a manual, so maybe technically I should check the slave cylinder, but that comes off a completely different connection on there, and I never let any air get into the reservoir. So I'm gonna go ahead and just bleed all four corners. All right, so here is the bleeder on the back, so I'm just gonna crack that open, use 11 millimeter wrench, and I'm just gonna wait until I get air-free oil coming out. I'm gonna do the two fronts, then I'm gonna do the rears, then I'll come back and check the fronts. So that's a wrap on another episode, guys. I don't know about you, but I think they look absolutely amazing. And on the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty easy job, especially if you're just doing the fronts. It is super easy. The side that I did when I wasn't filming, I probably did in like 45 minutes. So you could probably do like 2 hours and have it all done. Before you put your car back on the ground, don't forget to cycle your parking brake a few times to get the pads to bite. Especially important, I guess, if you're not on a perfectly level surface. And then as always, when you do brakes, before you take it for a drive, make sure you pump the pedal to get the pads against the rotors. So the first time you go to hit the brakes, they actually work. That method of filling up the reservoir and just like quickly disconnecting one line and plugging in the other worked really well, because bleeding the brakes was super easy. It was like 10 seconds and all the air was out of there. I probably shouldn't speak too soon. I haven't driven the car yet. I am going to wait tomorrow. When I had to manhandle the rear brakes back together, I made a few scratches on the freshly painted calipers. Probably, hindsight being 2020, should have waited a little bit longer to put it back together. So I had to make a few touch-ups. So I'm gonna wait till tomorrow before I drive the car. But I'm pretty happy with how the rear brakes came out, despite struggling to clean them. That was definitely the hardest part of this entire job. It took about 3 cans of brake clean and just like a ton of elbow grease to get those to a point where I didn't even think it was good enough to paint. But so far, it came out all right. Fingers crossed it will last. Yeah, probably the hardest part of the job was just getting the rear brakes together with the e-brake cable and the brake line. There's just like not a lot of room to move the caliper around, and then trying to get to those bracket bolts on the back, there's just not much room back there. And then as you saw where I have my 1/2 inch drive torque wrench, I kind of struggled. So probably a 3/8 drive torque wrench would be perfect for that. But as always, hope you guys like this video. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.